We're talking about the crippling condition arthritis because it's often linked to older people, but it also affects 15,000 children and young people in the UK. And now, the world's first research centre dedicated to understanding more about the disease in teenagers has opened in London.
Well, here to tell us more are the classical artist Laura Wright, who suffered from adolescent arthritis, and Arthritis Research UK's medical director, Professor Alan Sulman. Laura, Alan, morning to both of you.
Morning.
Well, I mean, Laura, you were singing the national anthem at Twickenham yesterday afternoon. In fact, a highlight probably for many of the England rugby match. I mean, clearly you're doing well now, but tell us about your experience of arthritis.
Yes, sadly, when I was about 7 years old, so slightly younger than the research that we're talking about today, I was diagnosed with septic arthritis, which was a form of arthritis where a tiny part of the crevice of my knee began to get septic, but I actually then got septicemia in several places in my body because the doctors were unable to sort of diagnose what it was for quite a long period of time. So, and I'm very proud to be an ambassador for Arthritis Research UK today and talk about it.
What happened? Because obviously that started when you were 7. But what happened in the later years, your adolescent years?
So a few years later and after I was dealing with the consequences of having septic arthritis, I went back to school. I was in a wheelchair, which obviously meant it was very difficult to cope. I was unable to play any sport. I was unable to take part in any of the things you could at school, and at a very important age, I think, where you're making friends and you're finding out what you're good at and what you can do. So it was quite difficult, but as I say, I'm very lucky that I was that little bit younger, and I think that's why it's so important to have this research in adolescence, because I think it really can affect you.
Alan, most of us, I think, look at arthritis and think it's a kind of one-way street, that once you've got it, you can't recover. So it's a bit of a surprise to me to hear that Laura's made such a good recovery.
Yes, well, it's a bit of a good news and bad news story really with arthritis. There are about 15,000 children in the UK that have arthritis, and they kind of divide themselves into 3 groups. When they start, the arthritis looks the same. And a small number, like Laura, go into complete remission without needing any treatment, and that's good news. There's another group of children that really need to be on continuing treatment but can remain well. And thirdly, and sadly, and what for us is a very important group, is a group that's going to go through childhood, adolescence and into adult life, taking their arthritis problems with them, probably for the rest of their adulthood.
So what are you hoping to achieve now?
Well, the important thing for us is really to understand the impact of what happens during this period when you transit from being a child into adult life, because there's so many things that change with you. I mean, most people will be aware of the hormonal changes, but some fairly simple things like the way our body perceives pain. The fact that during the teenage and adult years the growth finally happens and the skeleton is changing with growth.
Can the symptoms actually become more severe in youngsters compared to adults because they're going through these changes?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things we need to know. We need to understand how all these other changes in the body affect the symptoms. And there's some other really interesting things as well that we really need to do research on. The way you respond to treatment changes. It may just be simple painkillers, but sometimes it's the stronger treatments. And then, of course, the really important thing is when you're a child, your parents will manage your condition for you. When you're an adult, you'll probably be aware of what you need to do, but when you're a teenager and adolescent, the last thing you want to think about is your condition. You want to be normal, you want to do the things that other normal teenagers and adolescents do. So what we also have to understand is what we need to do is to help these people at a crucial part in their life do everything they want to do, but isn't going to harm their condition later on. And this is why the Arthritis Research UK Centre at Great Ormond Street with University College is so important.
So, I mean, Laura, clearly you have made a very good recovery, because you're not only selling a lot of albums, I mean, you're playing rugby, or you're boxing. You're one of the most sort of energetic people in the world, aren't you?
Well, I think actually that's where the drive comes from for me, in performing as well. And I think, as you were saying as well, I know that my mum found it really hard, and my father as well, to cope with what I went through. And I think from surviving that and going into remission fully, I kind of got this drive behind everything I do.
I think we need to have an example.
Yeah.
We need proof of just how well you are doing, because they were lucky enough at Twickenham to hear you. Can we have a little burst of a little something?
Yeah, I think I can manage that. It's still a little bit early, but we'll have a go. I sing a little bit of Ave Maria.
Go for it, go for it. chills down my spine. That was amazing.
Oh, really?
It's a great story. It's great to hear that you're doing so well and an inspiration for many of the kids. And obviously the research that you're doing now, hopefully find some answers and make it a lot easier for those young people. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming in. Thank you for that gorgeous treat as well. Thank you.
No time to get to